how should we as DeFi users or DeFi investors think about risk and risk management in DeFi? Because there was a traditional metrics, on the lending side and what have you, but also um, you don't have a team of risk managers sitting in the bank with a pen and paper and discussing how to approach things. Everything is codified, and whenever there is code, there is room to manipulate it, right? So over the last few months, we've seen a lot of price manipulation and very complex kind of code, not even code attacks, basically. So how do you guys think about managing the credit risk and the smart contract risk?
Yeah, I think it's useful to have a look at how these attacks usually look like and how systemic collateral assets are. So if I use Seraphim token as collateral, for instance, whoever is crazy enough to borrow against that, whoever's crazy enough to borrow against that, go ahead. But what happens is if it's a very liquid asset, Seraphim token, and you lend it, oh, by the way, we're speaking about over collateralized loans here. So I have to lend something to borrow something, right?
Hmm.
So if I were to deposit Seraphim token, and then I was able to pump the price by 1,000% because it's very liquid, which often, is the case. That basically means that if I pump the asset, now I can borrow a lot more against it than
Hmm.
usually I would be able to. So I can just run away with a bunch of Ethereum, and that's it. And people who are lending Ethereum out, they are facing the prospect of bad debt because they can't get
Because
their money
then it
back.
would just leave this bad asset sitting on the balance sheet because you actually don't care about it, right? Because you just pump the price.
Yeah, it's like you don't care about Seraphim token. Actually, the risk, the pumping the asset might cost you, let's say, 20 grand, but you've stole $3 million worth of Ethereum. So that's a pretty good trade, and that's systemic risk because you leave just because Seraphim token is illiquid. You leave Ethereum lenders without money, and so the contagion has spread to another lending pool,
Hmm.
which is an issue. Or alternatively, what you could do, I mean, I don't know why people would do that, but economic incentives are not quite there. But you could collapse the asset price of the collateral. That way, all the borrowers that borrowed against it are stopped out effectively. They have to be liquidated. Why you would do that? There's probably lots of reasons for, I'm not aware of at the moment, but, that's another thing that's risky about illiquid collaterals. When it comes to illiquid borrowed assets, there's also risks. It's not as systemic, well, either way, it would be pretty bad for lenders of those borrowed assets. So if I used Ethereum as collateral, which is pretty okay, and I borrowed Seraphim token, and somebody could easily just collapse the price of Seraphim token, now I can borrow a lot more Seraphim token than I normally would be able to, and I can run away with these assets. Now if it's illiquid in the first place, maybe it's not as valuable, but that's an attack vector that is not as systemic, which is why we put so much kind of effort into assessing the value of collateral, the kind of liquidity and volatility of of collateral assets.